Now, the next session is intended to keep you all awake. And we're going to start looking at reflecting a bit, I guess, in terms of the 15th year and some of and in fact, the main product out of the work of the CIGF over the years. Oh, I think we need to project a presentation. Yes, very good. Thank you. And basically, what I propose to do, which is look at our Internet Governance Policy Framework quickly. Look at what some of the main tenets of it. In fact, maybe I just go on to that next one. Yeah, explain it for those in the room. And one of the challenges when we have our CIGF is always that we have some new people who don't necessarily have all the background or fully seized of all the details that went before. So there is a kind of quick overview that I give of what this policy framework is, what it contains. And then next, I'd want to review some of the key tenets of it to see, from your point of view, and you see it's marked interactive there. Does this look good enough for us to take forward into the next few years? Granted, this particular version is like 2015, 2016 actually, when we finally issued it. And we're now in 2019. So, but we know the speed at which technology advances. So I think given the 15th anniversary milestone, it is probably appropriate for us to make a quick look and see what feedback we get from you to take forward. The way we proceed with revisions of our policy framework is that every 3 years, 4 years or so, over the course of 2 or 3 of the fora, we take inputs. And we at the CTU would compile those inputs and put them into, make appropriate amendments based on the feedback we receive, and bring what we would call like a final draft to the next CIGF to get general consensus. Well, yes, we could update it, and this would be the next issue or the next version of the policy framework. So basically, we are continuing with that process. We did get some feedback last year at our CIGF in Suriname, the 14th. We are the 15th now, and we'll see, just explain what basically the next steps would be. So we've talked about this Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework. We've said that we're not aware of anywhere else in the world that has one. And this is because our intention in convening this forum has always been to develop a Caribbean consensus around the issues of IG. And we decided to record them in a document that we call the policy framework. So it's a high-level policy advisory document. We say it's multi-stakeholder sourced, meaning from our group here over the course of several meetings, compiled by the CTU. And it has a mission and vision for internet governance. And how should I say, it has a vision. The vision isn't exactly for internet governance. The vision is for the Caribbean Information Society. And that basically came from the WSIS background of this whole forum. It also provides policy-making principles and guidelines for policy development at a high level. It again identifies the high priority areas for us here, and using the reporting channels of the CTU from time to time, we would present the policy framework to our Executive Council and Conference of Ministers for their endorsement or for them to use for consideration in national policy development. I hope you might be able to see that. This gives you a sense of what's in the book. After the introduction, there is the second section is the basis and the aims, right? Explaining what internet governance is. It has a statement of vision, a statement of mission, and guiding principles. So this is kind of where we're coming from, the bedrock of what comes later. The third section enumerates what we see as the main priority areas. And things like infrastructure, or broadband infrastructure, I should say. The internet technical infrastructure. That's like what they like to call critical internet infrastructure. Legal frameworks and enforcement, content development, public awareness and capacity building, and research. Those are the areas that we had identified. And then there are some other supporting sections related to operational structure, basically showing how we might channel it through the CTU structure, implementation strategy, measurement, monitoring, periodic review, and so on. So what we are doing is living up to section 7, where we agree to periodically review what we have, and so on. So we'll, given that we normally, I would say normally, because in most cases, when we run the CIGF, it tends to be for about 3 days. One day basically with education, we always have new people, and we tend to try to bring everybody up to the same level of, a common level of understanding as far as, or basic level of understanding, I should, before we get into 2 days of forum type discussions and workshop activity. This is a workshop activity, but we have limited time this year. So we might break up in groups. And in fact, I'll allow, you could probably allow a few minutes for you all to discuss in your table groups, very few minutes before we actually do a plenary type feedback session. The status is that we are at issue 3, issued in 2016. And that was reviewed at the 12th CIGF in Belize, finally reviewed at the CIGF in Belize, and I think that was like August of 2015. And again, as I just said, it'll undergo periodic review, and any amendments that have been proposed since 2016 and to date and at this meeting and after this meeting will be taken into account for the next issue, which would be issue 4, which we estimate probably we might be in a position to do next year. So if we start to focus on some of these statements that are there, right? I will just let you all look at that for a bit, and maybe say a word to the person next to you on the table and see if you think that might be appropriate for going forward. And then we'll come back to plenary and get your feedback. So the vision for a Caribbean Information Society is a knowledge-based Caribbean community with strong identity and leadership in the global information society. So in other words, making a place for the Caribbean, not just as consumers of content, but we must be able to establish our own identity and also be able to bring ourselves to a position where we can show leadership in the global information society. And actually, I remember very well when we settled on this wording, and it was a long time ago. It was either 2007 or 2008 in Curacao, and it was a big. I remember a big workshop session, and comments from all over the place, and we cooked it and so on, and we eventually boiled it down to this. So if there's any element that just you can discuss it for like 120 seconds, and then I'll just come back here and just take any comments from the floor. And my colleagues from CTU could help me with recording any feedback as well. Second.
What the Caribbean Information Knowledge want to do.
Oops, sorry. All right, I'm ready to take any comments you all might have. That was what? Yes.
Okay. What we started talking about is that was a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we have our seats at the table now. They're not going to throw us out of ICANN or anything. So we don't need to push for identity and leadership spaces anymore. What we do need to do is start looking at us and create our digitally literate society that works towards development, regional development.
What society? I didn't mean.
Digitally literate.
Digitally literate.
Yes. Which is kind of what has been your theme this year too, eh? So we start looking at a digitally literate society where we can utilize the resources that we have towards creating, innovating, and developing our regional society. Well, I would say countries, but then we're not talking country, we're talking region. So that.
I see a comment request in the back there.
Thank you very much.
Jacqueline, you could continue to work on some text from, yeah. Actually, I wonder if I'll be able to. Okay, no, just a question of putting it up. I could probably put it up here.
Nigel?
Yeah?
So I just wanted some clarification, just a little bit.
Yes.
Because I know you said, okay, this was done. What exactly is the vision? Is the vision the Caribbean Information Society, or is the vision a knowledge-based? What is the vision statement? I just want to be clear. Or is it a combination of the two?
The vision is that we are trying to create a knowledge-based Caribbean community.
Okay, so because you have
the rest of it is descriptive.
Okay, so for me, I am just getting a little confusion because you have vision for. Could you go back to the slide?
Oh,
thanks.
Okay.
So this is for the Internet governance policy framework, but
Correct.
You start with saying vision for a Caribbean Information Society.
Yes.
So to me, I thought that was the part of the vision, and then you described it and what is a Caribbean Information Society? It's that. To me, the vision is not clear. To me, a vision is what? What is it? What do we want to aspire to be? So are we aspiring to be a Caribbean Information Society, or are we aspiring to be a knowledge-based Caribbean community? To me, it's not clear. So that's one of the first things to address, yeah.
We are aspiring to be a knowledge-based Caribbean community.
Okay, but so means how it's written.
Yeah, well,
I'm just saying, as I am new, so I'm just saying I am one of these new people who are now seeing this, and I'm saying there's not clarity in what is the vision for me. So for me, the vision would be I want to be a very simple statement, a Caribbean Information Society. That would have been, and you've defined it. As it is now, I am not clear. I mean, apart from the request that you made of us to see if it's relevant, for me, I just wanted to get clarity. And
Okay,
I'm just saying how it's documented.
Let me see if I could give you the context from what's right there, right? I said the rest of it is descriptive. We're showing Indian leadership in the global information society.
Right.
So this was in the context of a world summit on the information society. I guess a brave new world that uses ICT and all these fancy tools that we now have for commerce and for different aspects of living and so on, right? And they call that, they said this, at the time it was, the buzzwords was like information superhighway and so on, creating a global information society, right? So a part of that, the Caribbean is a part of the world. So we were looking at the Caribbean Information Society as a part of the global information society. Okay, so what was our vision in that sense? What was our vision for the Caribbean in the sense of an information society? That part with the vision thing is really just the heading. That's not the aspiration. That's just the heading and the context. What's the context? If we talk about a Caribbean Information Society in the context of the global information society, what are we talking about?
Right, and I think that's for me, it's a little bit of disconnect because the policies for internet governance, and then you go into the information society. So I am not too sure if it fully addresses the internet governance part. For
All
me.
right.
So that's what I'm just saying, maybe this is where you could perhaps look at one, and I know we spoke about digital, but we should perhaps look at what are the values that we want as a Caribbean now in 2019, because you said you did this in 2007. Before we start crafting the actual words, what should it envelop in any vision statement? Because this is what we want to make sure that people could grasp. It's very easy, and we agree with the underlying values and basis for it. So I'm just looking at process.
Two things. One is, part of your challenge is the brevity of PowerPoint. I pulled this from a document that would have had more explanation, right? That would have established the context better. So that part is missing. Number two is, I guess we need to review whether we're still calling it an information society, right? Whether we, on a global scale, we still call it an information society, and whether it's now to be called something else. Go ahead, Maria.
Thank you. I want to segue on the point of my cohort. Leadership. Do we have leadership?
It's not about whether we have it, is whether we aspiring to it.
Yes.
And that's what this is.
But this is it. But we have to have a vision for leadership. And you have to have it somewhere in there where we're walking the talk and not just putting down something that is we in the room possibly, and the persons who developed the concept would understand and need an explanation. When you walk into the SMA and there is the vision statement on the wall, down to the janitor understands what the vision is. And there's a purpose, because we are all collective in the process. Nobody should have to explain the vision.
Yeah.
So again, I think that's what the whole essence, because we were having a conversation at our table too about, the strong identity, global information society. Again, yes, it sounds fantastic, but are we really putting the real vision in front of our people to understand where we're going?
But if it sounds fantastic, if you say it sounds fantastic, fantastic in what sense? It sounds like a good thing, or it sounds like something out of our reach?
And that is the point. It sounds out of our reach. At this juncture, if I'm going to be very honest with you, and we're having an honest and frank discussion, leadership comes from the persons that are in a certain place of power. I want us to reflect. Has there been buy-in in this global information society from our leaders?
It doesn't have to, when you say from our leaders, you're talking like political leaders now.
I'm talking about any person you think in your society and my society, in the Caribbean society, who has the influence to effect change. Have they bought in to this concept of a global information society? So you see, when you're setting your vision, your mission, it must be that persons understand then the next layer, what are the goals, what are the objectives, because those are things that are going to build this.
Correct.
So I'm just asking, is this space already created for us to mobilize the things to follow? It's just a question.
Let me hear from Lance first, because I'm talking a lot. Let's hear some more.
I think there are a couple of things happening here. There is a vision, there's a mission, there are goals and objectives. And I think we are seeing those things at the moment. Certainly at this level, you have a responsibility towards regional development and advancement. And really, you can possibly say that this is what you'd like to do at this level. So we can say that a knowledge-based society that will contribute effectively to regional development and advancement. That is an overall global goal, if you wish. And then from there, you could get into the mission of, because things like strong identity and leadership are deliverables in that sense. So you can still get that. It's just a matter of where you're putting it.
Right.
Because remember, there's the vision, which is quite global, and then it is the mission and the goals that then begin to deal with leadership and identity and all the other things that have been discussed. So to keep this simple at the highest possible level in terms of what you want to do for the region, and then you could then put the lines in for the rest of that when that's done.
Right.
Merely my 2 cents.
Yeah, let's hear what Jacqueline is saying.
I want to go back to what you said first.
To what you said first.
Yes, this was done a while ago.
Yes.
A while ago, 2006, 2007, we were starting to create the institutions and so forth, the multi-stakeholder institutions for the information society. Our goal, our vision at that point was that we would be part of that in a leadership role. That's part of where we came up with this. This is purely because I have history. So I remember how this came about. The environment in which we were at that time, they were building multi-stakeholder things, and we were like, you know what? We want to go out there and we want to make sure that we have that people globally know our identity and we have our leadership roles. And we've done that. That is the vision. That's where we are now.
What do you remember about the identity
that we wanted to go out
aspect
there and show people what the Caribbean was, who we were. Because before, remember, if you go back, when in WSIS, there were 2 people, me and Trevor. And nobody knew who we were. Nobody knew what islands we had. We wanted to go out there in Icana and ISOC and all these places and say, this is who the Caribbean is. We can lead, we can do things.
Right.
And that was what we developed then, that we wanted to take leadership roles in the global information society. That's done.
And do you feel that it is beyond our reach?
I think we've done a lot of it. CTU have a chair taker, they're not pelting you out of the back. You know, we've got the leadership roles. You know, so we have, yes. So this vision is where we are now. But now you want to see where we're going to go. So I don't think it makes sense to argue about what we did in 2006 and this vision, because
but this was aspirational at that time.
It was, and we've reached it. We've accomplished it to a great extent. Not perfectly, but to a large extent we've accomplished
You think
it.
we have strong identity?
In the global information society, yes.
Just to add to what you said, I also recall identity relating to Caribbean content.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I said.
And building a certain
part.
amount of Caribbean content. You know, so anyhow,
we haven't totally gotten there, but you know, we're in a different space now. So maybe we could just look at a new vision.
Well,
That's gonna
what are the
take-
elements
that's gonna
you
take us forward from where we currently are? What is our place now, and where do we want to look to be?
you mentioned digitally literate as one thing.
Yeah, well, the
so
one our table came up
let's
is
hear
a
some text
digitally
that could give
literate
us some of the concepts that we're
what
talking
we
about.
had come up with on this table before
Yes.
we was that our offering was a digitally literate society that innovates towards regional development.
Digitally literate society that
Innovates
right?
towards regional development. And yeah, you only gave us 120 seconds.
Yes.
And Talia is saying she would like the word inclusive in there somewhere as well.
Jacqueline, just repeat the what you.
A digitally literate society that innovates towards regional development.
An inclusive and digitally literate society, or something like that, where the same comments as I came in the room, we were talking about inclusivity and broadening our horizons when it comes to that. Because I think as Caribbean people, we are still behind on that inclusivity that we know we are losing out on in our human capacity within the region because of not being those limitations removed by that segment of society.
So now we are at a digitally literate, inclusive society that innovates towards regional development, Nigel.
Oh, are we going good?
Yes.
Towards regional development.
Regional development.
Okay.
And that could include content. Right. And that could be where we start including the concept of creating our own content and so forth. In the development part.
Okay, I myself would have preferred something a little more explicit with content, but I'd give that. But so we've put down one proposal. We can take some more and let's see what comes out of that. And I'd said 120 seconds because we have a comment here from the back.
No, before that. I just want to make the point. I agree with Sonja. This group is an internet governance group.
Hang on. The internet governance is only a part of developing the information society.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
This World Summit on the Information Society came up with, somebody help me, how many different points was in that report? And it was a large number. And I said, 80, 100, I forget. Of which 10%, 15% maybe related to internet governance. Right? So it's not quite the same. This isn't meant. The next slide actually deals with our mission for internet governance. Right? In support of the information society vision. So this isn't meant to be very specific to internet governance. It's internet governance plus other things. Yeah, so that's I say part of our challenge is that the brevity of PowerPoint.
Change the name of the
If you
frame.
remove the heading focusing on the Caribbean IG policy and leave just Vision for a Caribbean Information Society, I think the problem will go away. I think
if you
take the orangey brown colored heading out and leave just Vision for a Caribbean Information Society, then it's quite clear what we're talking about. You have two headings.
Right. Okay. No, the orange brown one, is just the slide heading, meaning this is just a part of the policy framework. So the next one will also have it. If I go to the next one, let's see if I do this, what happens? Nope.
While you're experimenting, the thing that I wanted to say.
You see? So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I know,
so
but I think
all of
that's
this
what's
relates to the
causing
same
the
thing.
confusion.
Yeah.
You said that in the previous vision, the one thing that had not been achieved was the content. So you should mention the content specifically here, that it has its own content. And the people talking about leadership, you'll probably throw me out of the room, but I thought really and truly this whole environment was supposed to be one of sharing and balance, and therefore you do not compete for leadership, but you do make sure you make your contribution, you work towards balance.
But this leadership was actually saying that we wanted to see Caribbean people driving. Mr. Wilson is, well, not just participating, but certainly in front. Certainly in the forefront or in the vanguard, you know? Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I would prefer a very short vision that is repeatable by anyone who reads it in a few words.
You find these long on?
And I would like to suggest that the vision should be to have a digitally enabled society. Simple.
Well, you know what Einstein said? It should be as simple as possible, but not any more so. And is that maybe, well, I don't know. Say it again, please. Let me put it down.
A digitally enabled society. That's the vision.
Okay, so my understanding of what a vision is something to aspire to. Good? So it's not where we are now, it's not a goal, but it's a broad overview of where we are, of where we want to go, or where we envision, or where we see ourselves in X, right? Okay, so given that we all agree that that is what is a vision, anything that doesn't fall into that, into those parameters, we should not look at now whether it's not a goal. A goal is different to a vision, right? So let's keep that in mind so that it helps us to focus quickly and get to a defined vision that we can focus on. Yeah,
right.
That's all I want to add.
Oh, I thought you had some text for me. No. Go ahead, Cecil.
You know, being in government, you see this a lot, and I think maybe one of the things we need to figure out before some of us can make the next step, because maybe some of us are there, others of us are not there.
Yes.
So we are having what I call competing philosophy as to what a vision represents.
Yes.
Okay? And some of us have a vision of, have a philosophy which says a vision must spell X, Y, and Z. Others say it must be, it's a competing philosophy of defining a vision. I think at the heart of that competing philosophy is whether or not the vision in and of itself is for the society as a whole, or a vision for internet governance. Once we answer that question, then I believe we'll be all closer to understanding what would now need to be put on paper.
It's for the society as a whole.
Right. So because if it's a vision for the society as a whole, then in that context, then some of the questions and answers, persons would have had different visions as to where they see the vision that may go to. There are some persons who may say that it's about economic development of our societies, or there are different views. If we want to narrow that to internet governance or using internet governance as a tool, then, but I think we're having some trouble, some of us being first timers, making that transition to understand what it is we are to think about.
Like I said, this vision was, and well, so far still is, for the society as a whole. And as I mentioned, in terms of the information society, the internet governance part of it is just one aspect. Yeah, Talia?
Yeah, Nigel. Okay, so I'm building upon what everybody's been saying, and I'm ignoring the top, which is IG only. So we're focusing on Caribbean Information Society. To me, this does not only include digital, right? It's about sharing and transferring of knowledge and educating our people and becoming just more, having enabling environments for more education. So just for the word education to also be included somehow, or environment to enable the sharing of information. We have an information expert in the room, which is Dee. And I think where she was coming from was just for us to not get ahead of ourselves. Where Agra is coming from for us not to have vision creep, which happens at all organizations, where we form a vision and then somehow we go outside of it. It is very critical to agree on it if we have to move forward and build upon what was done in the past. So for me, information is not only digital, and we still need to include traditional somehow in it. There's other ways also to improve Caribbean information, with digital tools being one of the most, of course, intrinsic ones.
Now, this is the significance of the term knowledge-based in the original vision. All right, that's the significance of it. It's an end. It's an outcome you want, and technology is one of the means. Right. So it's a vision for the society as a whole. So the knowledge-based that's using the information in a smart way.
Share, knowing how to share. Knowledge-based is a term used to, I guess, promote that part of, we need to be more open to sharing and giving of information, which we know is a challenge we have in the region as well, too.
Yeah.
I have some text for you now.
You have some text for me now, okay.
A knowledge-based, digitally enabled society. Digitally empowered society. I think we make some level of progress there, yes? Okay, there's lesser rambling in the room, so I think we're going somewhere. Yes?
Okay, inclusive. Somebody said inclusive. A knowledge-based, digitally empowered, inclusive society. Where would we put it inclusive? Before digitally?
How about then a knowledge-based, digitally empowered, inclusive, because we're making a list. We added on things, we're making a list. So just list them out. Knowledge-based, digitally empowered, collaborative society. Any other words? It was education we wanted to throw in there too. Anything else on the list? So we have knowledge-based, digitally empowered, inclusive, collaborative society. That's all the words people had so far, right? Right. Anything else? Don't forget the Oxford comma.
The what you said? Oxford comma, is that what you said? Collaborative. Let me put that separate.
No, you see, that's because I've seen the inclusive but not collaborative thing happen a lot, quite a few times.
What do you not going?
Cynical,
I can't make
but
it too small.
it's true.
And I can't. Let me make this smaller. Knowledge-based, digitally empowered, inclusive society, period.
Period. And thank you very much.
How collaborative, knowledge-based maybe as well.
Knowledge-based does not
knowledge-based as well.
necessarily imply collaboration. Huh? There's a lot of knowledge base that's siloed and does not
Yeah, true.
include collaboration.
True.
Not necessarily. Not always. But I would like to wonder if we still want to keep our leadership in the global information society in there. No, I know we done do it, but do we want to still have that position?
If the vision is aspirational,
yes,
couldn't we aspire to be equal rather than inclusive?
Equal?
Equal, yes. In other words, nobody's left out. We don't have to worry about including people because they're all there anyway. That's what we're aiming for.
Well, we know what inclusive means. We would have to get another adjective meaning equal. Equal is not the right term to use there.
No, I'm understanding what Deirdre is saying because it's kind of like when you do something and you say that you're being tolerant. Tolerant is one of those things that says, yeah, you're an outsider, but we're not going to stress about it.
Yes.
But you are definitely other. I think we want to get rid of the otherness of people because when you do inclusive, it means we, the normals, are in the middle and we are including
other
you.
Groups.
We are including you. We are being nice and we are, but it still shows that there's an otherness to the people that we are reaching out and including. And what I think Deirdre is trying to say is that we should not even have otherness. So it should not be unusual or different to call out somebody for being blind and participating. That should be a normal thing. That we should have ramps and stuff by like normal. It shouldn't matter if we shouldn't notice that somebody's in a wheelchair. They should just be a person like everybody else. We shouldn't focus on what separates us, but just assume that everybody is, I think that's the focus of the word equal, right?
No, I hear what you're saying, and well, I don't know. My own view is that inclusive captures that. Is like this debate we often have in Trinidad and Tobago about diversity. You know, strength and diversity and so on. I mean, you notice the difference. You have men, you have women, for example, right? But everyone is included. But you can't not notice that things are different, you know. But the question is, what do you do when you notice that? We include everybody. It makes no difference. So I like inclusive. You know.
May I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm confessing. For a long time, it has worried me that the CTU and CIGF did not apparently include the persons with disabilities because they're one set of people that I work with. There are the workshops that Trevor runs, and they're great, but they're mostly for children, and they're mostly, we are giving you something, even though the very excellent moderators of the workshops are themselves disabled. So I was thrilled, really, earlier this week, to find out that the CTU, been there, done that, gone way ahead, because the people with the disabilities are an invisible part of the participants. I mean, you're not counting them. They're not wearing labels any longer. When I want you to put equal, I want a situation where no one has a label, no one. And everyone is there.
And you're saying inclusive does not?
No. Inclusive
mean
means
that.
there are still people outside you want to bring in.
Just to understand,
Yeah.
inclusive.
Yeah, see?
No, I agree in the principle and the concern, but inclusive means that you're making specific efforts to make sure that they're part of the conversation. Or the
Yes.
game. And that maybe is what reflects the word inclusive. Is not that I will include them. So I will make specific effort to make sure that they are part of this thriving digital whatever. So that's what it means. It concerns any that doesn't have the same means or situation, and that needs specific efforts, policies, budgets, projects, or whatever to be part of as the others, equally as the others. So.
Okay. I think I gave the suggestion of the word, and it was because I walked in the room and that discussion was happening. But I know it's a buzzword right now for those with the disabilities. But inclusivity, to me, means equality. It means it crosses boundaries between what we consider equality and what might not be considered by past societies. So to me, inclusivity includes all the gender discrimination, and it includes everything. It's a matter of perception.
Right.
All right.
Equality
is different in that equal means without distinction, and inclusive does include the distinction within the word. You see, that's the absolute foundation of it, that inclusive means there are differences, there are the norm, and there are others, and you want to include the others. Whereas equal means there are no norms and others. Everybody is everybody. Everybody is everybody.
Yeah. All right.
Nigel?
Yeah.
Sort it out.
Yeah. Let me just say.
Oh, great. Go ahead.
So okay. So I'm hearing the distinction being made, and in terms of the language, I understand the distinction that people are making, and that's how you are thinking of it now. Whether that's how someone reading the vision will think about it is a completely different matter. People relate to words depending on to the concepts that have been associated with those words. And this is why I understand Nigel's point about the use of the word inclusion. It doesn't deny your point. It just means that this goes out to the public at some point. And how is this to be interpreted? As somebody with a disability myself, and who has been involved in the world of disability and policy making and that kind of thing in this area, we have used the word inclusive very much for the recognition that there are differences between people. And if we are to achieve equality, then we have to take specific action. So there is in fact the inclusion. You really do have to recognize that there are differences and that we as an organization or as a society have to take action. It's not going to happen. Nobody is going to be equal all of a sudden.
What she's saying though is even beyond that. If you're saying equal.
Well, the thing about it is the what? Where do we want to reach? We want to reach equal is what she's saying.
Yes.
Right? That's what she's saying.
Equal is in the vision, and the
but if the vision is
the
to be
goals,
a motivating
the
statement.
the steps that we go through will be the inclusivity thing.
I understand all that. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying I know where you want to go.
Right.
But if you are to make an impact on society with the words that you engage society with, it's just saying equal doing it. I'm not so sure. I've been involved with this for a long while.
Let's leave that particular one to cook for a little bit.
To act.
And let me ask generally if there are any other concepts that we feel that we might want to carry forward. Mr. Wilson, there was a mic. Could he get a mic, please? Oh, okay.
I just want to caution that we need to be wary of being too specific in the vision.
Mm-hmm.
The vision is exactly what it is. It is
a broad something.
If you begin thinking of inclusivity and all that as being part of the vision, then you have to ask about gender and gender differences and all the other things.
Well, all that is inclusive.
So yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm suggesting that inclusivity is part of the working methodology. If you're going to have an enabled knowledge society, whatever you choose as your vision, then you're going to have to bring all those groups along in your work plans, in your goals, in your objectives, and how you set your programs. Right? So the vision, in my view, should not be specific in any one single area.
Right.
It should be as broad as possible. And therefore, we need not clutter the vision, in my view, with terms like inclusivity and all that.
Right. The alternative statements so far talk about different descriptions of society. Someone said digitally literate or knowledge-based, digitally empowered. But I guess knowledge-based would include digitally literate. But it leaves out what was there before with the parts about identity and leadership. Dev.
Yeah, so actually that's what something I was just about to come to, because actually I think we want to be, I'm not saying those points aren't relevant, but I think they're all looking a bit insular looking and so on. But I think we aspire to be seen on the world stage, and in all areas of endeavor, whether it's in the government level, helping to influence global policy, at the civil society level, at the business level, and so forth. Not just, and those things there are yes, they're useful too, but I think we do want to be, to have a strong identity to say like, okay, the Facebooks and it's not just Google and Facebook and so on, just being a US thing or using European thing, but we want a Caribbean,
So you advocating for keeping that
identity and leadership in global globally, yes.
Right.
So it basically seems as if the knowledge-based, digitally empowered society is who we are.
Yes.
And the other part would have to be, and how we are seen.
Yes.
So we've got the first part, kind of. So we just need to add back on the second part.
We could.
The how we are seen.
Right.
The how we participate, what is our role on the world stage.
Right.
And then we have the two parts.
Right.
Our part, ourselves.
We want to be known.
Part and our outward part.
And we also want to be in the forefront. This is just the vision. The initial policy framework did not seek to have a mission for the information society, because it then became specific to internet governance, right? So recognizing internet governance is just a part of the information society thing, because they have a lot of other stuff related to information society. a lot of things related to education and so on. We touched on it a little bit, but not in too much detail. Yeah.
I was just going to say some of the parts.
So I could probably, I don't know how to do that. Yes, I could underline here then.
Yeah.
So instead of knowledge-based Caribbean community, it's tending towards knowledge-based, digitally empowered, inclusive or equal society. Is that right? And then with the strong identity, whatever. So we changing the initial descriptor, making Caribbean community a bit more, I guess a bit more specific, or yeah, some more specific aspects of that.
Do we want to be happy or satisfied or
Well, you want a word?
Well, there is one word. We could be a utopian society with strong identity, because that would cover everything. I mean, it sounds somewhat ridiculous, but if we push to that level, that's where it's going to be.
Yeah, maybe a little far as far as information society is concerned, but let's see. Let me just underline this part too, so that I'll remember which parts. I was trying to find another adjective for equal, but it can't come to me right now. We could probably check that out a bit after. So, is there a sense in the room that these are the elements that we want to end up with in the vision? If so, well, we could leave it like that, and we'll massage it, and I'll probably bring it back tomorrow as a revised statement.
One thing, Nigel, just the leadership in global information society. What exactly does that mean? What you're trying to achieve there? And I disagree with Selby, by the way. People, the disabled, and a lot of people are just not seen in society. So if you don't make sure that people think about them, they continue to be forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that having something like inclusive or all-inclusive, equal, is very important, even though it extends the...
You were asking me something about global information society?
Yeah, the other aspect of it, what I was asking was, what does leadership in the global information society mean? It sounds very grand, and is it something that that we want to be leaders in the society? That's all. Because when you say leadership, it's almost like if the Caribbean society is going to be the leader, or that is going to have leadership or something like that. It just sounds unreasonable, given the
because when there was a time when we were thinking about it, and we were thinking, we could get, depending how the information society works, it was a thought, it could turn things around so much that the G7 would be a different G7. And there might be an information society 2100 G7 in which the Caribbean would be the leader. The leader in the US would not be, and that kind of thing. Because at the time, the idea of the information society was so revolutionary, people were thinking it could really turn the world upside down. And I don't know if we still think that, but it is possible, given the upheavals and changes that are happening, that 50 years from now, the Caribbean might very well be one of the leading regions in the world.
An example, Trevor, is all these global indices and rankings. We should be seeing more Caribbean countries up on the top, not Europeans. And look, we have Asian countries up on the top. The Singapores and the South Korea, those types of countries. We want to see Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, up in the top 10, that sort of thing. So that's the kind of leadership we're talking about in those information society metrics, right? all these sort of, so it shows that we are making effective use of the technology. Effective and innovative. Actually, that was a good. I found that was a good word that I would have liked to find a way to include. Actually,
if that's the case, then should it just be a leader, rather than leadership, and a leader in the global information
and a leader,
as opposed to leadership somehow?
It doesn't read too well, but I'll put it in brackets to contemplate.
Nigel?
Yes, Kim?
Yeah, so one of the things is we must be grammatically correct, right? So
yes.
It's pedantic. But as it is, the original is not, I don't think it's grammatically okay, because you don't want to say with leadership. So I support the recommendation for leader as opposed to leadership, because that is more active speech, and you want to use active speech. So how you can get the two concepts from the original statement in is start with being a leader with strong identity. Yeah. And the thing about the innovation and the digital literacy, with all due respect, all of those are fabulous. I just want to suggest that we try not to use words that have become overused. So it is, I think, more powerful to use simpler words. But anyway, so right.
No, but I didn't get whether you were for or against innovative or innovates.
I love the concept, and I think the concept is important. I just don't like the word. If you understand, it is overused. Yes, it's overused. So there's two things about the innovation, because sorry, I was in the Facebook, right? But the two things I am not so keen about in your reference to innovation there I saw somewhere was innovates towards. That again is sounding like we trying, innovates towards. It's just, again, I think too much indirect. You want to be crisp. I think you want to be crisp, So I love the concept. I'm not sure that the words themselves ring. The statement has to ring, and it has to feel comfortable.
Right. So you were saying like a leader with strong identity. All right, I'll remember that. I'm going to put this in italics. Okay. You like the concept, but not the thing. Okay. This is just a vision. At least this is just the vision for the Caribbean Information Society. There is more. And it's 3:30. I wonder if you have a liquid break. Well, we have a liquid break in the back, so to the extent that you all might need to do so, feel free. Okay. Oh, let me go back to, let me go back to the thing on this one. Right. Now, as I mentioned, Internet governance came out of the World Summit on the Information Society. And the Information Society was looking at how this whole data revolution was impacting on society. And part of it related to the connectivity and the technology parts, which were more the subject of internet governance, although there are legal and other non-technical type elements as well. So we sought to come up with this mission. In fact, we came up with this mission for Caribbean internet governance. And oh no, actually it's an important point. I was going to say, let me go back. Before I put this up, it is to be understood what we're talking about, or we're talking about when we said internet governance. So I think I have that in this deck here, hidden somewhere. This should be the very last one. This one. I wonder if this could, yes. And we can blame Jacqueline for this. Online not seeing this one. Yes. When we created a mission for internet governance, this was the context under which it was done. This is the definition from that expert working group that informed the World Summit on the Information Society in 2005. And internet governance is the development and application by governments, the private sector, and civil society in their respective roles. So all of that related to the multi-stakeholder process. And what is this multi-stakeholder process developing? Shared principles, norms, rules, decision-making procedures, and programs that shape the evolution and use of the internet.
I think it's great.
I'm sorry?
I think it's great. I think it's great. I think it's great.
You think it's great? Right. No. It has stood up, and like Jacqueline said the other night, that nobody really hated it, and it was a manner of stating it that was acceptable to all the stakeholders involved, right? And they basically are working together to create principles, and they could be technical and non-technical. Right? Principles, norms, rules, decision-making procedures, and programs that shape the evolution and use of the internet. Right? So that's basically the context. I wish I could have kept that up while I look at the other one, but I can't. So let me go back up. To here. Yes. So the mission was to develop and maintain the appropriate regional multi-stakeholder frameworks, mechanisms, policies, and procedures that would enable these things. One, the first bullet related essentially to infrastructure and services. So it said universal, available everywhere, no unserved areas, open, equitable, affordable, flexible, and secure access by Caribbean citizens. Access to what? Access to high capacity national and regional information infrastructure linked to global information resources, meaning the networks as well as the data. Right? So our mission is to create all those frameworks that would enable that first bullet. So the first part is infrastructure and services. The second bullet is ample supply and capacity for creation, lawful use, and distribution of Caribbean content and technologies. So what we're doing with the infrastructure and services, we're developing our capacity to create Caribbean content and maybe even new technologies, right? Caribbean content and technologies. So we want to be creators, not just, consumers. And the third bullet, I guess, is an outcome: expedite the development of a vibrant digital economy in the Caribbean as a business aspect. So we want great, first bullet, great infrastructure and services. Second bullet, great capacity in our people. And the third bullet is the vibrant digital economy. That's the business side. And that was the statement of mission. You still have the mic? Yes, please.
Are we doing tabletop or are we just throwing back feedback?
Oh, you mean
Yeah, we're just giving feedback, just ad lib, just so?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
So
Because,
three
well, I guess we run
comments, three sort of immediate reactions. One is just being a little pedantic about it, that in the first sub-bullet,
yes,
linking, what we are linking, yes, to global information resources, but all of this stuff, whether universal, open, et cetera, is not only to access resources, which is the information side of the internet, but there's also the whole sort of communications side that maybe is not represented there. And maybe you don't need to represent it because it's understood. But when I think of information and communications, it's not only that I want to link to resources, but perhaps I want to link to other people, you know? So that's just a thought. A second thought is in the second sub-bullet. So I love it, but I would consider that we want to enable ample supply and capacity for creation, lawful use and distribution of Caribbean content and technologies, absolutely. But we also want to enable the lawful use, you know, and distribution of content and technologies that are not Caribbean. So what you're doing here is you are limiting the notion of lawful use and distribution to that of the Caribbean content and technologies. So you may want to split it into two, or just at least recognize, you know, recognize that. And there was a third, which I've forgotten. So I'll come back to it if it's important.
Right. Okay, I understand the second point is, okay. Let me put a thing about non-Caribbean content there. Use of non-Caribbean content. Sorry, I have to get out of that. Oh, I should have put a question mark. Anyhow, it should be I should have put a question mark. I should have. Right. But I'll remember that. Any other comments? So in fact, so the first bullet, the thing was the communication aspect, right? It was to me it was understood, because if you have access to the regional information infrastructure, you know, you would use it for whatever purposes, including communication. But you know, but we're still open for comments. I'm not hearing you. ICT? Okay, so each time we have information? Scrap be linked to global information resources, but then it would only be talking about communication within the region. Link to global ICT resources? Oh, okay, all right. Before I go back down, let me see if you have any other comments. Well, yeah, I could do it. So instead of information, we will bracket that. And ICT. All right. Let's put a question mark here. Now, we also mentioned information here, regional information infrastructure. You could say regional ICT infrastructure. Okay. Yeah. Well, at the time this was written, yeah, it was supposed to be like ICT, you know? Yeah, not just the pipes. Yeah, it's supposed to be. It actually does. Would ICT information resources or ICT resources is which one is more? Is ICT more specific? A little bit too specific? Does it leave out something? Because the information resources could include both the pipes and the data. Mm-hmm. But what is missing is?
What I feel is missing is the human equity in ICT, because ICT in its broadest term is covering information systems and telecommunications.
Yes.
But what is missing, and the most important component, which I've learned, is the people behind the technology. And so often we forget the persons behind the technology.
You don't think that's the second bullet?
Well, you see, I'm answering the question you asked. If you're speaking specifically only to the whole area of the equipment architecture, then again, a lot has changed in the space, but it's still that global ICT still covers everybody, everything. The Internet of Things, you have a number of things. When you think of machine to machine, spectrum is a new child. Even so, because 7 or 5 years ago, you looked at spectrum in a different way to how you look at spectrum now. Mm-hmm. Because we all know that last mile will only be achieved with spectrum, at least in my area. So again, it's depending on how you're looking at it.
So what, are you making a case for saying ICT resources and infrastructure?
Yeah, because again, the region, and again, I'm going to speaking again from my vantage point, we have brain drain on a regular basis to Canada. Well, there you go. So when we train the best minds, they don't stay in Jamaica, they leave, especially in the area of ICT, because we are not challenging them enough.
Yeah.
I find that the children you find.
Or paying them enough either, but. Yeah.
They get bored.
Yeah. All right, let's hear Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. All valid points. I would just say that I don't think we should try to make that particular bullet all-encompassing. And perhaps we need to add another bullet if we're talking about human resources, because at the end of the day, sound infrastructure underpins the internet, and that's what we need in the Caribbean. We need sound internet infrastructure, and that in itself is a point on its own. And I think if we want to include or embrace the whole issue of human resources or the human element of it, then that we should address that in another bullet point. But we have to be clear that the Caribbean needs sound internet infrastructure if we are to be, part of the global internet. Let me put it that way. So that, I think it merits. I don't think if we try to make it all encompassing, then I think we lose that point.
Yeah.
That within the region we need to make sure that all of the islands in the Caribbean, all the countries in the Caribbean, have infrastructure that is up to a certain standard, that is able to link with the global internet, basically.
That's the first bullet. The infrastructure and services.
I wouldn't try to make it all encompassing.
Yeah.
How does that look? How does that look? So, for example, we have an IXP sitting in Jamaica for the last 3 years, 4 years, not being used.
Right. That's the third bullet.
Not being used, meaning an IXP is there to ensure, like the Facebook of the world, we'll come and put a server there. The Google has put a server there in recent years. But what it means, our data stays in country. as opposed to going and hopping all over the place. So for example, it's not being, no traffic.
No traffic.
Very, very little traffic.
Yeah.
Very, so why I brought it up? Why I brought it up? Why I brought it up?
Just now we have too many discussions going on at the same time.
And why I brought it up is, does everybody in the Caribbean, or how we linked as a Caribbean, are we still going to the US for our hops?
Right. To some extent, I'm sure.
I am asking questions.
Efficient.
Because what we're trying to do as a nation, as a Caribbean region, is to come together and standardize. And this is a point. And I'm very passionate about this, especially at WRC. Because when we go to WRC, Radio World, teleconference, every Caribbean nation has one vote.
Each of us. Right.
Each of us has one vote. US has one vote. But we need to get our act together because we need to change our world. And that's the point I'm making.
Right. And I agree with you, but I think IXP is part of the infrastructure that we need. That's what I'm saying. So if we're talking about universal, open, equitable, affordable, flexible, secure, then we're talking about infrastructure that is deployed efficiently and effectively in the region, including IXPs that keep local traffic local. I mean, that is what we all should be striving for within the region. And that still speaks to infrastructure. So I'm saying that point can stand on its own, and we can speak to the element of our human resources. We need to build human capacity within the region in a separate and distinct bullet.
Can I just suggest for that first sub-bullet, perhaps for your consideration? I agree that we need to separate the issues because you don't want to dilute any of the issues. You want to make each issue very clear. And the first sub-bullet is about infrastructure.
Yes.
Can I suggest that the wording that you consider is regional information and communications infrastructure linked to global internet resources? Would that work? High capacity, national and regional information and communications infrastructure linked to global internet resources? Or is it that you do not want to use the word internet in the rubric?
It's not that you don't want to use the word internet, it's just I wonder if that limits it, you know?
And what is it that excludes? What is it that wording excludes?
Other information that might not be on the public internet. You can have connections to global information resources
I see what you're saying.
that are not accessible via the public internet. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So that's
And would internet governance cover those though? Is the scope of responsibility and authority, as I use that word in a fluffy way, would that be within the scope of internet governance, those private resources?
I guess not.
So then if not, then it should be. You see, I haven't been around the internet governance community for several years, but as I say, from my point of view, it's important that that we understand that there are information resources and there are communications resources, and they work together.
Right.
But they are distinct, and one does not include the other necessarily. So anyway, but if this my first point was not an important one. We could ignore it, leave it just as it is, or consider, as I say, high capacity information and communications resources
I kind of like
linked to global internet resources, and move on, or just leave it as it was.
Right. Communications. Let's say communications. Linked to global. And I'll put the internet here too and think it over. See if we're missing anything. Yes, it is outside the scope of internet governance, but since we're talking about the networks, we want to retain that flexibility in the networks as well. But as I say, I'll let it cook. And it was suggested that we have a bullet related to human resources. Now, the first bullet talks about infrastructure and services. And the last bullet.
Can I just ask one point? Because it goes back to what we were talking about, the vision and this vision for internet governance or the information society.
You had to talk louder.
So, okay, sorry. It goes back to that first bullet, but if this is about governance, it can't be just to enable. It has to be to ensure, because governance is about ensuring certain things. So it's not an enabler. You know, this framework should be about ensuring. Yep.
The mission?
I would remind everyone that the mission, that internet governance by definition is not government, it's multi-stakeholder. And by definition, multi-stakeholder can, except there's been no, unless we get a new thing here, there's been no multi-stakeholder that has been able to ensure. Because we don't, as multi-stakeholder, we tend not to have the authority to ensure. We can assist, we can enable, we can work towards enabling things, and we can sometimes, and we can push on the people who actually do have, outside of the multi-stakeholder world, the power to insist, which would be governments in the nation state paradigm in which we live. But
yeah,
we can't, as the multi-stakeholder group can't enforce that. The multi-stakeholder group can get a member of the multi-stakeholder group, which is the government, to ensure it. But I don't see how the multi-stakeholder itself could ensure. It's because the internet has this space called multi-stakeholder that sits around this thing, this paradigm that we live in called nation state. And they don't work, they don't connect one-to-one.
Since we have accepted the wisest definition for internet governance, one of the things I think we're doing that's very wrong, because it's tantamount to disagreeing with that, is to call what we're doing Caribbean internet governance. I think we need to call it
in the
internet
Caribbean.
Governance in the Caribbean.
Okay,
and
fine.
we need to make this similar change higher up, because the whole idea is the sort of one world idea, rather than cutting it up into little pieces.
I think we can take
And I
that
think where
point.
Deidre coming from is the fact that, you know, as Caribbean people who are still on a path of learning, we have to be open to making sure that we learn from others. So yeah, even on top.
Sorry, can I just say though that in terms of nomenclature,
no, nothing wrong on top.
It is consistent with, this is me.
Oh, right.
We talk about the global IGF, so just in terms of nomenclature, it is kind of consistent to say Caribbean, as opposed to internet governance in the Caribbean.
Well, no,
but I don't want to split
remember
hairs
you're-
over that.
You're referring to the forum.
Or the forum.
As opposed to the governance. So it's internet governance, which is a global thing, in the Caribbean, and the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
The Barbados Internet Governance Forum is internet governance in Barbados, and the forum is Barbados.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, nothing wrong with the heading.
Yeah, but I think it's important that we agree that this is the distinction, and when it is that it is an event, or a gathering of people, and it is a forum, it may be referred to as the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. But when it is unqualified, when it does not relate to an event or a gathering of people, when it is the thing, internet governance, it is internet governance in the Caribbean.
Okay.
And if we adopt that and always be diligent to not go back,
Yeah, understood. I think that's taken on board. This concept of a bullet related to human resources. Oh, I looking back at the one thing about ample supply. I think with respect to the non-Caribbean content. Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah, with respect to non-Caribbean content, I think it was meant to be, it was intended, how did suddenly, oh, because I added a line, okay. I think the bullet was specifically intended to be related to local content, right? So the first bullet would have given you access to the non-Caribbean content linked to global information resources, right? So
yes, but it doesn't.
You are connected. You're connected. You're globally connected. You can get everything. So you're connected and you can consume. The second bullet was related to producing, right? So it didn't exclude the non-Caribbean content, but it just was specific to producing content. That was consistent with the strong identity on the global stage. We have to create Caribbean content and have it out there, but let it be a desirable product. That sort of thing. Jacqueline.
Quick question though. The way it is now, do we want to clearly state that part of our mission is to focus on the lawful use and distribution of all content, otherwise known as, would we like to say that our mission includes not being a hotbed of piracy? Well, yes, but you see, the idea of the lawful use and distribution was really for the Caribbean content. If we are looking to say we want to create Caribbean content, yes, but to create a second bullet point that says that part of our mission is that we are lawful consumers of all content. So please do not steal the Netflix and the torrenting and all the stuff that we do so much.
And you see, the issue of creation is tightly linked to distribution. So creation and distribution. But when it is that you put in lawful use there, I find that is limiting the scope of lawful use in a way that stands out. So I could see ample supply and capacity for creation and distribution of Caribbean content, etc. But then the lawful use stands out as if, why are you limiting the lawful use to just Caribbean content and technology?
Yeah, it's really because the whole bullet related to Caribbean content.
Yeah, so either we could take lawful out and assume that we're just lawful and that's not part of our mandate to make people lawful, and just say creation and distribution of Caribbean content and technologies.
But it is part of the policy recommendations we had under content, under the content priority, right? That misuse was one of the things that we wanted to prevent, as it were. So we suggested we needed policies related to misuse of information, cybercrime, and that sort of thing.
But that's not related to creation of, you see? And that's what I think Jacqueline and I are saying is if it is that we wish to have a position on lawful use, then I think that it should be pulled out, and that this bullet here really is about the encouragement and stimulation and support of the creation and distribution And then the other issue is lawful, which would encompass and include that the creation, what is created in the Caribbean and what is not. And protected, exactly.
Well, yes,
Exactly.
agreed. But if you're qualifying it by saying Caribbean content, we're saying remove lawful, because if you're speaking about lawful distribution use of content, it relates not just to Caribbean, it relates to any content whatsoever. So in short, I would remove lawful from there. Creation, use, and distribution of Caribbean content. And if you want to address issues of legality and so on, then address it separately.
So take out lawful use is what you're saying. I don't want to lose it. So let me just put it this way, because we might want to include that idea in another one. This bullet 3, human resources, what would be the concept of it? What are we talking about? Capacity, human capacity to use the internet.
We pass that, though. We pass that. Right, but for all content, not just Caribbean content, all. And if we, in principle, agree that we respect intellectual property, then it's not just Caribbean content; it's global.
Yeah, that's better, right? I don't know. I had it so small all the time. Anyway.
Bracket around lawful, but leave use, because you want to.
Yeah, just lawful, not
yeah.
use.
So the issue is
Not use. At least, okay.
Yeah, you can leave use.
And where would we capture that idea of lawful?
The issue
I think an initial statement of the first bullet, I don't think it included secure, and we put that in afterwards. That was supposed to be cybersecurity aspect. The lawful is more cybercrime.
You have secure access. Secure access by Caribbean citizens to high capacity national. Secure is up there.
Secure, yeah, it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Secure.
So you think that might capture the lawful concept?
Well, it's a high level. It's a high level. Well, well, in terms of lawful, right? I understand. No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that security equals lawful use
right.
and so on.
All right. I'll leave lawful as it is and try to incorporate it into something. So we have human resources, the capacity to use, and come up with, that's the sense of the human resource. That was the sense of the human resource comment. Am I right? Capacity to use. Yes.
Not just well,
and to make it work.
Development of human resource capacity. Internet.
Let me make it a little bigger. Oh, geez. I forget this is a. Anyhow, we ain't reached down the bottom yet.
Retention has to be there.
What has to be there?
Retention.
Retention?
Yes, retaining, not losing. Retention
development and retention of human
development. Because you have human resources, but you're not putting the two main things that are important, which is retaining and training. Because with ICT, we must train because it is dynamic, it's not static.
Okay, so you're saying retention in the bullet on human resources.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So
right. Okay.
At the top, we were saying to enable development and retention of human resource capacity. Society, yeah.
What was that, boy? L. All right, I'll come up with some words there, and we could think it tomorrow. Expedited development of a vibrant. Right, that last bullet that you're not seeing right now because. Right. That would address the point, and maybe we could expand it a little bit about the underused IXP, for example. Right? So maybe we need to put in there something about optimized use of resources, or some optimizing use of the resources to expedite development of, that would expedite development of. So we could
mhm. We must share. We must share.
Yes.
Collaboration is a lovely word, but in
Mhm.
reality, we really share. Because, yes, so we need to share. And I don't know, somebody in the room could put that there, because Caribbean, we need to share to get collectively, we need to share. We need to, I love that. We need to share to compete. That's a profound.
I want to feel that idea should go in the chapel.
Just to comment on that.
We say appropriate regional multi-stakeholder, but maybe we need
to share, but businesses are businesses. If they're not using the IXP, it's because it's not a good business idea for them. So what regulations and what incentives for the businesses, for the big telcos? So how can we have the right set of incentives, or regulatory incentives or fiscal incentives, so they use this IXP and lower barrier to access to new entrants, etc. So that's the right question, because businesses are not going to share because they love each other or love us, or they are businesses. That's it. So how we have the right regulatory and policy framework so that businesses do use the IXPs, and that's all over the Caribbean, this issue. Or share infrastructure, towers, lower cost.
But Jamaica cannot have one set of regulations and Trinidad has another. So collectively, because all the big players are here, they're everywhere. So the point I'm making is that collectively, as regulators, we need to set the standard and not be divided by the business. Correct. Yes, but collectively. Who wants the mic?
Sharing.
Come, my people. We need to hear your voice. I love this. I think everybody's heard my voice more than enough for the day.
Adding sharing and collaboration. All right, so as it is, we want to pull in the idea of sharing and collaboration to govern this whole thing. Tweak a bit the text in the first bullet, but the first bullet that I guess in concept is understood and accepted as related to infrastructure and services. Create a bullet related to human resources, capacity, and development and retention. I guess leave the bullet related to local content, and then amend that last one to include, I guess, some of the hows for development of the digital economy. Incentives, standards, efficiencies, and so on. It'll be a lot of hard work, but we'll see what we come up with for tomorrow. And that's vision and mission. We are at 4:15. I'll ask you all one more thing. Actually, the next thing was guiding principles. This is usually not controversial, but I'll say let's go to one more, which is the. Oops, this is I think this is an out of date. No, it is. No, it's not out of date. I think it's right because it says broadband connectivity, and it is 6 sections. Let me make it a little bigger. These are the priorities, the strategic priority areas that formed the different sections of the policy framework. The first one was broadband connectivity. That's the physical infrastructure. The second one related to the internet technical infrastructure, the addressing, the domain management, critical internet infrastructure, and these types of things. The things that are specifically technical related to internet. Then legal frameworks and enforcement, that's safe use, cyber crime kind of thing. Cybersecurity straddle both the internet technical infrastructure and some of the legal frameworks, right? The cyber crime aspects were more just the legal frameworks. Then there was content, and especially local content and other things related to information management. And then the other two, public awareness capacity building and research, measurement, status, identifying gaps, things like that. Yassine's presentation highlighted the importance of research because a lot of the countries that he cited where the approaches or the projects related to affordable access was concerned, in many cases, research was a key part, right? So we haven't really been very successful in getting resources for research. We did have one particular success with what do you call it? IDRC, with the IDRC, where we got some work done in about 2010 or thereabouts, but it's certainly one of the aspects that we had identified. So we have physical infrastructure, internet infrastructure, legal frameworks, content, public awareness and capacity building, and research. Stuff like misuse and so on currently would fall under legal frameworks and so on. Because as it says there, the areas it covers are national and regional structures for protecting users' safety, rights, and property. So it'll cover misuse. Yes, dear. But Rodney, if you have it, you could start.
Okay, so my observation is that I actually don't have a big difficulty with the policy framework as it is, and we can tweak stuff and change words. I think what is important though is that we start to push this as a real regional policy framework. So it should really inform. We talked about the national IGFs this morning. It should inform those discussions. It should be a point of reference when we talk about national IGFs. So we should pull the major policy areas from here, and that should inform the discussion. And if this doesn't address issues that are relevant to us in Barbados, or if in our discussions in Barbados other issues come up, then it should feed into this. So I'm saying that what is important, in addition to changing the language in this document, is also the concerted effort to ensure that this is fully adopted and pushed. And we can do it through the multi-stakeholder groups, like TTMIG and the Internet Society, the local chapters, and the governments as well, but that we should push towards more widespread adoption of the policy framework within the region. Okay. Thanks.
And this sort of follows on to that. Please, if we are going to have a human-centered internet, could we put public awareness and capacity building first? I know these are 6 equals, but people jump to the first thing at the top of the list. And when I saw this document a long time ago, it irritated me for the same reason, because you build all your broadband and your infrastructure, but there's nobody using it. Because, so please, can you put them at the top? And please, could that be a general decision that the human aspect of the internet governance is given priority all the way through this internet governance policy for the Caribbean? Not the infrastructure, not the telecommunications, the people who are going to use it.
Okay. Any comments on that?
I have one thing to add for this. We are talking about returning attractiveness and human capacity and building capacity and sharing of knowledge and all these good things that take human beings. But we also know there is brain drain happening in the Caribbean. It's happening for a long time. Everybody has family members who have gone on. But I have noticed just in my little purview within the last 2 years, we have people returning. And it's because they're seeing attractiveness due to their type of business they want to be in, their field of study. So if it is we make this public awareness capacity building important. Is this working? Yeah. It will hit all those deliverables as well too, bringing back the diaspora and growing the content, growing the capacity. So I think I agree with Deidre here too.
Okay.
Yeah, so I agree about the prominence of HR, the human aspects. I mean, I would encourage you to relook though at the classifications. Look at the top 3, which are currently the top 3, but we have agreed they would no longer be the top 3. But if we look at them, I would prefer to see legal and regulatory frameworks as opposed to legal frameworks / enforcement. Enforcement is a part of your regulatory framework. So legal and regulatory frameworks. So you bring down regulation from the top and it's in there. Also things like, you see the first one, the physical infrastructure, access and connectivity. As far as physical infrastructure is concerned, what is the difference between access and connectivity? Also, quality of service is not in its true sense purely an infrastructure issue. You can put quality of service and technical standards under legal and regulatory. You see, so let's have some clear categories. The infrastructure, you can have physical infrastructure, you can have logical infrastructure, fine, but then the bits and pieces that you put in there should be clearly physical and logical, and then the rest of the bucket is legal and regulatory. Yeah?
Right.
So even the critical internet infrastructure, you have that in logical. Yes, there is a component of it that is logical, but there is certainly a very significant component that is physical. So I'm just saying those 3, yes.
We changed, the reason physical and logical are grayed out is because they were changed. That's what they used to be called. We used to call it physical and logical, and we changed it to infrastructure for broadband connectivity.
Okay, good.
And then internet technical infrastructure.
I don't know what technical means, but yes, I understand what you mean to say. But yes, if you would consider though,
or maybe we call it internet infrastructure. I don't know. If
I feel happy with that, except that is a technical interpretation, of internet infrastructure. But what I'm saying is, and if you want, we can have a chat later about some revisions, some recommended revisions to just those 3 buckets.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say about the way people can look at things. For me, research and people are the reason that we can get content and legal and infrastructure and all the rest. I'm not particularly concerned with which, maybe I just look at things upside down, but I'm not, it just never occurred to me that the top was more important than the bottom.
Right. That's true.
And I think
it's a perception.
If we just do a little infograph or chat, the whole thing goes away. and they're all relatively,
Yeah,
all
maybe
important.
if we put
Nothing
them
has been
across the top or
prioritized.
something.
I don't think we need to prioritize. I think by having
Yeah.
these things in there,
Yeah.
by definition, these are the things we prioritize.
These are our priorities.
Right. So
and they're all priorities. Maybe putting them like that
A circle. I don't care.
gives an impression. Maybe I'll see if we could put it sideways.
Yeah, see if we could get somebody good with infographics and make it look so that people don't get, because to me
Right.
they're all important. Nothing of those could happen without would work without your rest, and there's no need to,
Yeah.
All right, so I would just
Rodney?
add to that as well. That, I believe there can be a merging of the physical and logical, and call it internet infrastructure, and move the regulatory stuff like QoS and regulation down to legal and regulatory frameworks. And, yeah.
No, sorry.
So I believe that we can merge the physical and logical. Call it internet infrastructure, and deal with move the quality of service and regulation and the technical standards under the legal and regulatory frameworks. To simplify it.
Technical standards is not necessarily regulatory. It's not regulatory.
Regulate standards.
I don't know. Like for example, a USB standard that's
that's a regulated. Yeah, it's been decided.
I wouldn't call that regulatory. The regulators might adopt it for their purposes, but is not regulatory. Mhm.
Those standards that fall within that are regulated.
No, not necessarily. It's the standards that are used on the internet, the standards that are used for the connectivity and so on. Yeah,
but those standards are adopted based on global policy and global framework, global regulatory framework, whether it's through the ITU or ICANN or any of those bodies. So we're saying,
it might be
splitting hairs, but
Nigel,
I'm saying they're not made by regulatory agencies. Go ahead,
aren't
Leonardo.
we missing net neutrality in this whole concept because we want to put people forward, and net neutrality is a good building block to give people the opportunity, the right to get the content that they need and they want, without being blocked by the ISP, and maybe we also need some focus on the provisioning of service instead of just a focus on the infrastructure itself.
Services. Okay, the net neutrality is on the content, on the internet content, the information management part of it. What was the other thing you said was, what was the other thing? You just said it. After the net neutrality, you said something.
Service provisioning.
Service provisioning,
It depends
right.
on the service provision and not the actual
Service
network, the infrastructure itself.
I guess the closest we have there is quality of service up in the first one.
Actually,
infrastructure for broadband connectivity.
Nigel, maybe something like net neutrality should be in the mission, as in keeping a free, open.
Accessible.
It's there. It was there. It said open and so on.
But if the whole concept of net neutrality, that should be there. but
Open
then
and
you need to
equitable
break-
and all that.
But you need to break down what you want about net neutrality in here. Would it
in here?
isn't it- yeah, if you're going to put it in here, it would be
it's there.
framework that would support that.
Again, it's a PowerPoint thing. So when you go to the section in the document about content, internet content, you will find a specific policy recommendation related to net neutrality, right? So it's in there, but it's not obvious in the summary because it'll fall under information management. Is why it'll fall under information management. Is what? Privacy? Privacy would be under the legal and regulatory frameworks. There are national and regional structures for protecting users' safety, rights, property. It should have said privacy. Yes. Yeah, it should have said privacy there too. But that is part of legal and regulatory frameworks.
safety, property, and privacy.
Yes, I could put that in.
And data ownership would be great.
Right. You could put that there. I'll just make sure it's there. Actually, I should underline this. And underline this. Right. Good. That's the rights, I guess. And I'll say the rights are there, but the rights is also a contentious one in the internet governance world because it is seen to be wider than just internet governance, you know? So I guess probably I should also see what aspects of rights we have in the thing. It's probably intellectual property rights mainly, you know, that we currently have in there, but I'll check it out and see. Yeah. Yeah, freedom of expression. So. Oh, Anissa, is it?
Yes. Just 2 comments. I believe we are beyond the era of ICT 4D and now in ICT 4 SDG.
ICT 4?
SDG.
Oh. Well, I know somebody who uses ICT for D still.
They still do, but the focus now is not just on development, but rather sustainable development.
Sustainable development goals. Okay, good. Okay.
Right. And
Next comment.
Second comment. I believe research is more than just measurement and status reporting, but investigative and studying so that we can improve or increase the body of knowledge as it relates to internet governance.
So give me a word or two to put.
Maybe analysis and maybe increase the body of knowledge related to internet governance. Because we would like to increase research so that we will be able to build not just on policies that exist, but innovate the policies so as to grow the sector.
All right, to increase the body of internet governance, increase the body of knowledge or something. Knowledge. Yeah, it's a little long, but. Okay, so we're not necessarily reducing. Oh, Rodney suggested that we might be able to merge the 2 infrastructures. And we call it, what do we call it? Internet infrastructure? Okay, so we move from physical infrastructure initially to broadband, because we definitely say we have to be broadband. So we could possibly go from 6 to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, from 6 to 5 areas.
I'd like to support that latter point. Cecil?
Yes, Cecil. Mm-hmm.
That latter point that was made way back. I think you might have been one of the persons I spoke with. You're from
I'm not hearing
US,
you.
TT, Trinidad, UA. Yes, I'm sure you're one of the persons I spoke with. way back in when I just became a MAG member for the IGF, I recall my first meeting, I had an awakening, whereby at that point I realized that we in the Caribbean were just trying to figure out what IGF was all about. And there are many countries, developed countries, which are studying, doing doctorates in internet governance. I remember, I'm sure I spoke to Deidre about it, and there were many other academics in the region that I called in an effort to invite them to be a speaker at the IGF. But in that point, I also made a point that we needed to see the universities develop work programs on IGF so that we could eventually get to doctorate programs to study various aspects of IGF. And I'm saying that because as we speak about the leadership and so on that we need to take in terms of the world, we need to give emphasis to ensure that we produce that next set of leaders, not just in the region, but globally, who will take it forward, take our message forward, that the Caribbean are leaders in terms of the information society. So I want to just emphasize that I believe that's a key step, because 10 years on, I'm not quite sure how many universities have any internet governance programs whatsoever. And I spoke to all universities in Jamaica, spoke to the University of Trinidad, persons there, spoke to somebody in the Bahamas. Nothing. I still have that message because I think that's one of the key ways we can transform our societies. We don't build it into our curriculum. We're not going to get there fast enough. So just want to emphasize that we probably should have it as our key priority that we need to achieve.
I'm pretty certain that we have some policy. In fact, the policy recommendations part of this document identifies certain policy recommendations and the recommended actors. I'm pretty certain we have something to that effect for universities to take action on, but I've taken a note of it there, actions for academia related to internet governance and under capacity building, and I'll verify it.
So at the same point, that's what I'm saying, that we need to push adoption of policy within the region, because there are institutions like the Diplo Foundation that's been doing a lot of work throughout the region, and that we can look to partner with and help to develop while we wait on the university, because that's not going to happen tomorrow. But Diplo Foundation has for years developed courses and has been interested in building capacity in the region. That's how I got introduced to it. The IG policy, advance, and internet diplomacy and those things. I mean, persons like Dr. Giovanni Kerbalaci, who has written books, done PhDs. So where we can have sort of immediate wins and work more closely with those organizations to help build capacity in a more structured way, while we wait for university to come around to it, because that's not going to happen overnight. We can identify specific targeted programs that can help us to implement this policy framework.
Right.
Two comments very quickly, because I know it's late. One is about 15 years ago, I had gone into the Caribbean telecommunications community asking them what they wanted to see in a master's degree in telecommunications, and their response was, not interested in that, we need telecommunications regulation and policy. Within a year, we had a program, Masters in Telecommunications Regulation and Policy, up and running. Bare bones, shoestring budget, but it ran, and we have some of the most spectacular leaders of the regulatory space as our graduates. So I encourage you to prevail upon the university, not us, but on other segments of the university. We only did it at the time because nobody else would, and we were probably the least the least best placed because we were a department of electrical and computer engineering, and most of the matters have nothing to do with technology at all. So we really were not the best place, but we were the only ones willing to do it, and we did it. But the reason I wanted to just inquire about the broadband connectivity is this. Again, I apologize that I don't know the history that has got you here, and I suspect that everybody agrees that it should be broadband. I'm just concerned that when you say broadband connectivity, it ignores two very important segments of connectivity. One is the amateur radio community, which is absolutely critical to connectivity. And the second is the legitimate access at low bandwidths for a number of communities. So I just want to, for the participants to recognize that that word of itself excludes these two communities.
Right, and they should not be prevented from accessing the internet. Agreed. Yes, and to your first point about the graduates, I know we have at least a couple in this room. Yes. Right. Yes, because those people do use the internet as well. Good. It's all right. So we need to rethink. Let me put a little note here related to what do you call it? Narrowband access. Yep.
You may not need to change broadband if it is clear in how you use this, that does not
Exclude, right.
Right, okay, because it
Yeah.
is the broader scope.
Yeah.
Just so that you always remember that there are legitimate.
Yeah. Granted. Okay. All right. So we've had. I feel I'm getting so much interaction, which is very much appreciated, that I'm going to push my luck and have you look at the one that I say is usually not controversial, and see if you have any comments there, and if you you might find that you want to add something. We have inclusiveness there as a guiding principle. Deirdre.
You need regional harmonization for other reasons than economies of scale. So I think you need to take out the economies of scale and just hope that you will have regional harmonization. You can't do all this business with IDs and everything we were looking at yesterday if you don't have regionally harmonized legislation and regulation. So it's not just about economies of scale.
What else? What else might it be for? You're saying?
The legislation and the regulation. You can't do a lot of things unless you can't have a single ICT space.
Yeah.
Unless everybody's.
I understand. One need not specify it that way. Yeah. Escape. So we taking this off. Any objections to taking it off? No. Okay. I'll just take it off. And I just realized, because I was trying to find a file just now, and I'm not using my computer, so I'll have to remember to take this off. Yes, Kevin.
Hi, Nigel. I'm not quite sure if the point is captured well in the last bullet there. I think it's important to ensure there are Caribbean voices that participate in global rulemaking when it comes to the internet. So not just from a receptive standpoint about following trends or taking into account best practices, but participating in global rulemaking. I think that is a key feature that needs to be explicit in this list of principles.
And could we cut out the best? Maybe call it good practices, because one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah, it has been a used expression. So we'll say good. Kevin, give me some words now.
I don't like the word trends though, because some people think climate change is a trend. So, and you know, the Caribbean is the most, one of the most fragile regions for impacts of climate change. So I would find a next word for trend, not to exclusively consider climate change, but you do have mentioned disaster preparedness and management, which is a side effect of climate change.
I'm really trying to remember what was the context of that, you know, to find another word for you. All right,
Yeah, so Deidre has
I'll put the trends in brackets.
critical issues. Critical issues is a good synonym.
And what might be a critical issue in your mind? Or like climate change or whatever. Okay. Yeah. Critical. Okay.
Yeah, so like geopolitical problems as well,
Right.
those, you know.
Right.
Social.
And Nigel, when you're finished there, I have some language that you can use for the point I raised.
Yeah, go ahead.
And anyone feel free to edit. Ensure meaningful Caribbean participation in global rulemaking for the internet.
Oh, there's additional, a new bullet.
Yeah, because I think it should be broken out. I mean, not to complicate that last bullet any further.
Yeah.
Ensure meaningful Caribbean participation in global rulemaking for the internet. I say global, but any forum that is beyond the national or regional level. So.
All right, let me underline that too, so I know that that's new. Good. The others are not controversial.
Is there a stronger word than consider to go in front of disaster preparedness? I would rather you did something more than just consider it. I prioritize.
ICT is actually one of the leading tools they are trying to use right now to help prepare. And I wouldn't say the word mitigate against Mother Nature, but prepare. So, yeah.
Use prepare where?
No, to use a stronger word instead of consider disaster preparedness.
Right. Include?
Prioritize. So,
apparently I have to say it through this. I suggested prioritize.
I'm offering one here. Or take account of. Take account of. I like take account of. That's a ITU construct.
Do we anywhere talk about who these stakeholders are? Because looking at number 4, the people who are very often not treated equitably are, in fact, people like businesses and governments. Other people have the conversation, and the businesses and the governments are on occasion pushed to the edges. And when you say all stakeholders, people always assume that it's civil society that's marginalized, but no, civil society will go and shout. Like,
how about that? All stakeholder groups. You good with that?
I'm not saying to change the point.
Uh-huh.
I'm just saying that you need to know who the stakeholders are. Stakeholder is one of those nasty words that doesn't really mean anything any longer.
Well, in this context, typically when we say this, we're talking multi-stakeholder, and that's the context of that is government, private sector, civil society, that sort of stuff. What do you think about take account of disaster preparedness and management needs? Yes.
I don't like the word disaster preparedness. I prefer the word business continuity and planning, rather than saying that a disaster is going to come. You know, you speak it, it happens. So I change my mindset. I put in our place, it's business continuity planning, rather than, yes, which is taking account of anything that should come our way, business will continue.
No, but it's not business alone.
Yeah, but all right, what you said, resilience? Yes, but can we take out disaster? Somebody has helped me with
Just to find a word, yeah?
Yeah, I don't like disaster.
Just to find emergency?
No.
Emergency preparedness?
No, come again.
No?
Come again. I heard resilience, plan. Can we have the scholars in the room? Come on, scholars. Do we need a stretch? Do we need a stretch?
We had to find a
You could take account of the need for resilience.
Nigel, I think whether we like or not, disasters do happen, and and it is one of the ways that we are using, especially in the international arena, let's say, to get assistance from others. So I think we should leave that particular name there. It's quite important. No, but they do happen.
Say that again, Shunan. So your point is that
if you look globally,
it's used globally.
Yes, there are a lot of discussions going on, not discussion, I mean, policies with respect to natural disaster mitigation strategies and those kind of things.
Right.
So
But we all agree that, or do we all agree that the point is to take account of that need for resilience under all circumstances, whether you have, whatever special circumstances.
I think, like Sharon said, if you have the keyword in there of disaster management, you can attract a lot of focus and collaboration on that. Disaster management is also one of the main items of ITU.
Yes.
And right now, including they having a program for developing a radio amateur station wind link system. They finalized it in the Central Caribbean, and now they're coming. In Central America, and now they're coming to the Caribbean. So by keeping the word in there, I think you can use that in your benefit.
All right, I haven't taken it out. I just put some other considerations there. And in my own mind, prioritize is a little too strong. Because it would seem to be more important than the other things. Maybe, or you could say take due account of, to say that, rather than take account of, you could say take due account of. Meaning, it's as important as everything else. And we'll see what come into the thing there. For this, the intended audience for this document is basically, as a policy framework. So it's intended to be guidance for our policymakers in the Caribbean. Within the Caribbean, yeah.
It's not looking to somebody from somewhere else to say, oh, they are paying attention to getting ready for disasters, so we will help them.
No. It's looking at what do our Caribbean policymakers need to do in terms of setting up appropriate systems in their jurisdiction.
Nigel.
Yes. Yes, Bennett.
The issue of disaster management and mitigation has become high up on the agenda in the same manner as cybersecurity. I mean, the ITU, I just got a document this morning where the ITU is looking at developing that wind link program that the gentleman just spoke about. This is a regional network they're going to put in the Caribbean because of the issues in 2017. And whether we like it or not, whether you want to use the word disaster or not, we are going to be faced with a natural disaster, whether it's through a tsunami, whether it's through hurricanes, whatever. We need to focus and emphasize the issue of natural disaster. And in so doing, we can put our resources together. Because whatever happens to Dominica in 2017, it's a matter of if it's going to happen to St. Lucia or Antigua or Jamaica or anybody. So the entire Caribbean is vulnerable. We have to begin to focus on those things.
Yeah. Rodney?
Yeah, no, just on that point, I think that resilience does cover that. Resilience does speak to the ability to continue to function after a disaster. So I'm okay with the language of resilience. I also wanted to say in terms of expanding the point that Kevin made about ensuring meaningful participation.
Yes, it's not showing.
Yes, it's gone off the thing.
How do
But
I make it show?
I just wanted to say, these are of course are bullet points, but in expanding on that, I think it should be emphasized in terms of coordination of our regional participation in the global forum. So I think if, for example, if a representative from the Caribbean is sitting on the governmental advisory committee in ICANN or attending the Internet Governance Forum, Global Internet Governance Forum, then their brief, their input, their intervention should be based on or should include the regional perspective. So they should, they're fine to represent St. Vincent or Antigua and Barbuda, but their brief should also be informed, or their input, their interventions should be informed also by the regional input. So I think it gives effect to this meaningful participation if our views and our policy inputs are coordinated and disseminated or put forward within these international and global fora. Right. So what I'm saying, we need to establish a mechanism. This is what makes it meaningful. We have a mechanism for doing that, whether it's through the CTU or by coordinating with the multi-stakeholders, the governments, the CTU has perspective on, the MAG, the Internet Society, local chapters and stuff like that.
So basically you want to make what we do informally formal, because this is how we work. So, yeah.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, just wondering, is there anything that talks to, how can I phrase it?
We're not hearing you too well.
Is there anything that talks to engage or collaborate or with the other parts of the Caribbean that are not usually in this? I mean, I'm talking about, you know,
like the French territories or
Dominican Republic, Cuba, Puerto Rico, that maybe represent a big part,
well,
and where a lot of these things. If
Cuba would be
I don't say that, you know, let's not. I'm not meaning a union or anything. Just talk to, collaborate, exchange, try to get closer. Maybe you have similar issues, problems, and solutions that you can share, or a common front in international organizations or in negotiations, in the ITUs, in the trade agendas, and maybe there are some things that are good to seek alliances. Let's say cross Caribbean, cross languages, cross the usual colonial inherited divisions and language barriers.
I would say that is actually something that does go on in the at-large end user community, but in a non-official kind of way. Because we do work with Haiti and basically all the ALSs within ICANN. We have a Caribbean caucus that includes everyone, including basically it doesn't matter as long as you're in the Caribbean, you're part of it. So Cristal from Haiti's in it and so on.
I don't remember if there's any specific statement related to that, but I'll check it, because in the first section where it talks about the basis and the aims of the framework, there might be some language there related to that. But I've taken a note of it here. I'd consider it. Which line? First line, inclusiveness and broad stakeholder engagement. Yeah, that statement relates to the regularly stated internet governance stakeholder groups of government and private sector and civil society. That's what that's talking about. Yeah. Yeah, so that doesn't mean that they're excluded. They could be included in there. Oh, you mean in that line you could put it in? Ah, okay, I now understand what you're saying. Right. Okay. Yes, okay, actually, yes, maybe I should put that up on that side. And delete. Right. All right, I think we got some ideas there. We have a session, we catered some time tomorrow to kind of come back from this workshop to review what we have. And I'll plan to use that time to maybe represent some amendments based on your comments, and we could see if we're satisfied with those going forward. There was another section I had hoped to do this afternoon related to advancing the sustainability, and that was been a discussion of our Caribbean Internet Development Foundation. which I think we'll probably have to carry across to tomorrow as well. So we'll have to be a little bit efficient tomorrow to be able to handle both of those things. So that means that we would like you to come on time tomorrow, please God. And in fact, it's important because the first item is a remote presentation about online safety. So, and you know, those remote presentations, we have to schedule them and basically try to keep them as they are. And it's somebody in the UK. So we would ask that, we would need to start at, promptly at 8:30 in the morning. So we can do that. We can do that. Our agenda calls for a discussion on data protection and privacy, more from the legislative aspects, or should I say legal and regulatory aspects. And then we would have some time probably to discuss the workshop recommendations and so on. All right, so I am very pleased, in fact, with the interaction that I've had, and I didn't notice any complaints about us running long today. We are at 5 minutes after 5 o'clock, and I think we still have a pretty full room. So I think the effort is much appreciated on behalf of the entire Caribbean, and we had some really, really vibrant and useful contributions. Deirdre?
Could we say hello to whoever is there,
online,
out there, around the Caribbean?
Yes.
Could we invite them to please tomorrow try to be a little more vocal if they could, because their ideas are very important as well?
Yes, I don't know if anyone is still online. They're just streaming. All right. You didn't get any comments come in? Any comments, questions? No. I see Agri might have a comment on that score.
Now, if we are streaming and I see you streaming on Facebook, you could simply.
Are we?
Yeah. So
there's somebody in the room.
So and there's some viewership. A good idea could be to put up an email address, have a moderator or two in the room. So apart from them typing the comments on Facebook is one. Two, they can now email the comments to us. So we could say, okay, someone from Facebook, email, send all your comments to this email.
No, I wasn't aware we were streaming on Facebook.
Right.
I'm not sure who's streaming on Facebook, but yes, we are.
Right.
All right. Okay. Well, maybe CTU is streaming on Facebook from a input that we have, but we are also streaming on the ISOC live stream facility,
right?
Which I believe allows us to get comments from the viewers.
Facebook also.
And we've been, I think, from time to time we've been monitoring to see if any have come in, and no one. Yeah, he didn't get any. We've had the remote presenters.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't seem to have remote hubs this year. Mm-hmm. I guess, and we have had from Trinidad and Tobago, but we in Trinidad. We've had from Barbados, who's represented here by Rodney, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines is usually the third one. But they don't seem to have an organizer hub this year. So I guess that's part of the reason why maybe we haven't had a lot of the remotes coming in. But no, what?
The IG policy should be guided by the principle that it doesn't matter whether you're there or not.
Or not, right. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that would be a principle of our forum, our CIGF. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, thank you very much for your attention and input. It is very much appreciated, and I think we deserve a congratulatory applause. I look forward to you all joining us for 8:30 in the morning when we start with that remote presentation. Thank you. I need to save this file. I'll save it.